We will not let addiction win. Welcome, guys, to the Sober Fix podcast channel. Thank you for checking it out. We've got another episode on. Another week sober, another episode. Marci Hopkins, award-winning talk show host. Now the Wake Up with Marci podcast. Man, 10 years sober. 10 years sober. She talks about addiction. She talks about abuse when she was younger, how that affected her addiction. She talks about her alcoholism. She talks about all of it, how it affected her life. When she reached that point where she wanted to get sober, that many of us reach, and how she has 10 years sober today. She's gone on to write books. She's helping a lot of people. I will put all her information and books into the episode details. If you are looking for sober coaching, we've got Josh Wool. He was on the podcast not too long ago with the Sober Creative Program. He said anyone who signs up that are Sober Fix podcast listeners will get a discount. I will put that information in the episode details. And with all that being said, let's get into it. What's up, guys? We're back, the Sober Fix podcast. We got another great guest on. We have Marci Hopkins, and I was just telling her, her intro is pretty cool. She's got the award-winning talk show, Wake Up with Marci, now the Wake Up with Marci podcast, recovery expert, accomplished author, and speaker. We'll get into all her books and everything that she's done. Really cool stuff, Marci. How you doing today?
I am great. I am today 10 years sober. I'm a happy person. So great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, 10 years sober. I'm at 5.5 years.
Amazing.
And I look back, and we were just talking before we started, talking about the holidays and Thanksgiving and stuff. I look back on just the changes that have gone on, and it's crazy. Do you feel like that sometimes with 10 years sober?
It's so crazy because there was a time that I could never imagine my life without drinking. I drank every day of my, uh, teenage adult lives, basically. And like to think of not having that in my life was unimaginable. And here I am 10 years saying I'm 10 years sober. It's a miracle and a blessing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is. Congratulations on that too, by the way.
You.
I want to kind of start off in the beginning. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Houston, Texas. Yeah. I've made my way around Houston, then in my 20s to Denver, LA, and now I'm in New Jersey.
Now you're in New Jersey. Cool stuff. What was childhood like for you?
Listen, childhood was hard. It was very hard. I won't keep you too long with it. I share my full story in my book, Chaos to Clarity. But there was a lot of abuse that went on in my early childhood. A specific story was I was abused, beaten by my mom's boyfriend, and that was at 6 years old. I'd gotten into some mischief, and he beat me, and my mother was just laying in bed watching, and it was a devastating time in my life. And that same day, we had to go to a family party, and my mother said, don't tell anyone. Obviously, she didn't want anyone to know. And there were a few things that happened in that day, and I broke down. I'm a 6-year-old child trying to keep all this in. I ended up showing my grandmother, and my grandparents ended up kicking my mom and her boyfriend out of the house. And I was given a decision to make, a choice to make, to either live with my grandparents or go back with my mother. And it took me about a week or so, but I made the decision to stay with my grandparents because I didn't feel safe with my mother and her party lifestyle. She had me at a very young age. I mean, she was just 19. And she had me in 1969. I mean, you can imagine it's like, she's in the middle of the party time and the hippie days and, peace, love, and drugs, really.
Yeah.
And so I stayed with my grandparents for a good chunk of my childhood, which I am grateful for. But my grandfather did have an explosive temper. So there was a lot of fear living in that home. But my grandmother was my anchor. She taught me my values, my morals. She took me to church. She was kind, and so I was very grateful to have her during those very formative years. Then when I was 12, my mother ended up marrying this man that I thought would be our knight in shining armor, like give us the life. Like I was finally gonna have my mom back and have a dad and like have this incredible life. Um, and I ended up my first time I got drunk was actually at their wedding at my grandparents' home. I was 12. And so that was my first experience with alcohol. And but I didn't like continue drinking. I didn't get in trouble at that time. I mean, my mother was an alcoholic, so it was like during those times that I was with her on the weekends, if I had a stomach ache, I remember 8 years old, she'd say, "Here, have a sip of my margarita. It'll, like, help you go to the bathroom." And I remember I couldn't sleep in her boyfriend's house, and she would give me half a sleeping pill. I mean, you have to think about it, I'm, like, 9, 10 years old. So this is something that I knew. So there was that opportunity to drink the champagne at the party, and I did. And ultimately, I did not get in trouble, moved in with him, and everything was fantastic for that first 6 months. But now as an adult, I realized I was being groomed because sexual abuse started at 6 months. So that completely changed who I was. I lost myself, my idea of love, what a man wanted from a girl, a boy wanted from a girl changed uh, traumatically for me. Like I just wanted to be loved, and I had so much love to give, but then it became sexual, right? Like what was on the outside. So that all of the abuse and that trauma was brought into my relationships, and um, so I had a lot of difficulty in growing up, understanding like what real love looked like. I had a lot of abandonment issues. Um, there are chunks of my childhood I don't remember because it was my mother knew. I shared with her a couple of times about the abuse and she didn't leave. So it was very difficult. And so I used alcohol in high school and beyond as a coping mechanism and a way to escape. So yeah, it was hard. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, honestly.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of kind of similar stories before where,
Mhm.
a lot of times where abuse, some type of trauma, or just a stressful childhood, whatever the case,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden that person kind of finds alcohol, and it ends up being this, I don't know, I always described it as kind of magic, or just the ability to kind of control and forget about a lot of that stuff that was bothering me. Is that how it
Mhm.
was for you when you first found the alcohol? Was it like an
Yeah,
escape?
so alcohol had a couple of um, different ways that it helped me. It helped me with confidence because I didn't have the confidence and the self-esteem and the self-love. So it helped me in that way. I felt like it made me stronger, like it empowered me in some way. It also made me forget and just try to push down all of that pain and have fun, right? Because when you're drinking and you're forgetting, um, it was like a relief, like a chaotic peace, if you will. And but then it would ultimately turn into a breakdown, right? Because you that first euphoria you feel with the alcohol changes the more that you drink, right? And then the emotions that you try to push down so much usually come up and creep up in some way when you're drinking. So and what I mean by that is in relationships, you become very explosive. There's a lot of fighting, um, and a lot of not only verbal. verbal, but there becomes the physical abuse that happens in that also. So it just becomes this pattern of chaotic behavior that like a hamster wheel, like you can't get off. You say you don't want it to be that way, but then it's all you know, because that's all I knew. All I knew is it was my fight or flight nervous system on over, um, at this overreactive state. And if I did have any peace, I didn't know what to do with that. So just the drinking would calm me and then perpetuate the craziness.
Yeah, as you're explaining that, I'm like, oh, yep, yep, check box for all that for me because especially when you talked about how it's kind of working for you in the beginning. It
Yeah,
has these nice effects in the beginning, and then but then as time goes on, it started to turn on me. It
yeah,
just started to and like you mentioned, all of a sudden these explosive fights or these stressful situations, and what you said at the end there too really hit with me because when I would have any little bits of peace or kind of clarity,
yeah.
it felt uncomfortable because I
So uncomfortable.
became so used to the chaos.
Yeah,
I just felt like I like thrived in it or whatever, but it was
yeah.
rough. It was hard times. I want to ask you, when did you start having issues with the alcohol right away? Could you kind of tell like, ooh, I drink a little bit more or I drink differently than my friends? Was that obvious to you or not till later?
Well, it's really interesting because I have always watched others drink and be conscious of my drinking, good or bad, no matter like where I was in my drinking, because the alcoholism that was in my family, I was always trying to judge my own drinking and if it was too much. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
just I was always generally conscious. Now in high school, I mean, I had waves of over drinking and then getting my drinking in check to a degree and just depended on what was happening in my life. High school was keg parties and blacking out. After high school, I found the clubs, then it was drinking and partying with drugs, ecstasy, and so on. That was late 80s. Then going to college, thinking that I would get a break away from that. And then, of course, always finding the party and the people that partied. Then when I finally actually found my way in college, found a stable job within in the media world, which is what I've always been a part of. Um, Life changed, but I still drink every day, but just in a different way, right? Like, so I'd get home and it'd be like that glass of wine, 2 glasses, unless I went out with friends and then it was excessive drinking. Then I found someone that I thought I was in love with, and I tried to change my drinking for that relationship. So I just was always conscious of it. I did notice that I would drink a lot more than other people a lot of times. I liked being able to be alone so I could drink how I wanted to a lot of times because when I was with other people, I tried until I couldn't a lot of times be aware and kind of tame and pull back uh to drink in a more conscious way. But yeah, I mean, like, listen, I was always aware of my alcohol intake and others, and a lot of times, yeah, it didn't look good, but I also a lot of times surrounded myself with people that drink like me or partied like me, so I didn't have to feel like I was doing something out of the norm.
Oh yeah. I it's so interesting you say that because I was the same way. I
Mhm.
As long as see, I started to recognize I kind of had a problem. I wouldn't admit it for a long time, but I started to kind of realize I was like, this is the thing that I'm doing with drinking and these other stuff that I'm using, it's just not quite normal. I kind of understood
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
oh, the surrounding myself with people that oftentimes I liked them to be doing a little bit worse than me. Like
It
I like them to
I
be
did
just
the same. Yep.
just a little bit more alcoholic than me, and so that I have someone to point at, but
I'm
what
not
started,
them. I'm not my
yeah.
mom. Yeah.
You know what happened though is I had all these people to point at first,
Yeah.
and then what started to happen is they were all pointing at me, and I was like, "Oh man."
Towards the end, that was me. That was me too. Like, I was like, "Oh my god, I'm becoming that person." Like, I'm the one drinking more than all of these people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird. I bet anyone listening can totally relate to that. We seem to do that a lot when
Yeah.
it just makes us feel better, I think, about our drinking. But I want to ask you, what was it like landing the media job? Can you tell us a little bit about that? How you kind of fell into that? How exciting that was?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I being that I didn't have a lot of guidance growing up. I had to care for my mother. Ultimately, she finally left my stepdad this summer before my senior year of high school. My senior year of high school, I kind of role switched. I was like caring for my mother in fear of that she was going to die all the time from drinking and driving. So it was a really difficult time. Then, of course, the idea we all are programmed, right? You graduate high school, then you go to college, right? I took my SATs, I went to college, started in junior college, and I just had no guidance. I had no direction. I knew I wanted to do well, but I just always it was an escape for me there too, because now I didn't have to live in the home with my mom. I could do what I want to. So I ultimately wasn't going to classes. And I tried doing junior college 3 times and it just didn't work out. So then my grandmother stepped in and she took me for testing, which they do now for young people, which is amazing to find like where your strengths lie, right? And what type of school you would thrive most in. So I took this testing and it was about I ultimately was a creative soul, which I always knew that. And I think that when you're a creative, you're also a little more crazy sometimes. But so I did the testing and it came up for me to go to the Art Institute. And at that time, I was hanging around a bunch of like guys that were in bands and watching live music. So I thought I wanted to run soundboards initially. And I found the degree in music and video business. Ultimately graduated, never thought I would graduate college and have a positive trajectory. Was still working in restaurants and such. And then my aunt actually found a that's when you looked in the newspaper, right, to find jobs. And so she found this job for this company called Liberty Sports Communications. She told me about the job. I got the interview, went in for the interview, and I ultimately at first did not get the job. They told me, "Well, probably we do contract work around Christmas time and we'll probably call you and bring you back in." And I'm thinking, "Absolutely not. I know this is never going to happen." But they did. They called me back in for that contract work and I was so elated because I finally felt like I was going to be on a path of to a positive life, and I never thought that that was going to be something that I was gonna be capable of doing, and here I was living it, and I took that opportunity and I ran with it. I had the contract job for 3 months. I did kick butt in that time. I was hired on full time. I did that job for 1 year. I did my very best in that job. Still drinking all the time, honestly. But once I commit to something, I do go all in because I knew that this was my chance. And then um I was moved from operations into programming and I was the assistant to the program manager. he took a leave of sickness, leave of absence. And during that time, they moved me in as program manager. So I had to learn it all on my own. It was sink or swim time. I mean, like, I ended ultimately getting the job as program manager. I moved to Denver. Then I moved to LA and ultimately became the director of on air promotions for FX. So, I mean, it was like I was given a chance and I was going to make sure that I made the most of it. And things looked good. I think today to myself, like, imagine if I wasn't drinking, what I ultimately would have done in that experience. But it's helped me in what I do today too. So media has just always been in my blood and my life.
Wow, yeah, it's an exciting story. And do you
Mhm.
think at that time was it more so at that time like kind of work hard, play hard? Did you kind of have that mentality, or were you just mainly focused on work? Or
No, no, I was playing hard too. I mean,
oh,
believe
you're
me. But I got into a relationship, and whenever I would get into a relationship, then I was all in on the relationship, and I would drink less during a time I was in a relationship, which, by the way, I was in a relationship most times. I talk about this in my book, Chaos to Clarity, also, is that I had like this addiction to relationships because I was too afraid to be alone. I couldn't be alone with myself. And so I was always getting into relationships. I was always pouring myself into that relationship. I was like a chameleon. I would be whoever that I thought that that person would want me to be. I would do whatever I could do to try to make them happy. People pleasing, perfectionist, all of that kind of thing. Uh, but ultimately, in the end, of course, that's not going to work when you're trying to get someone else to be your validation and your happiness, because ultimately you are the only person that can create your own happiness. But um, when I was in my work, I found someone that I fell in love with, and I thought that that was going to be my person, which ultimately he was not. But I pulled back because it was when I was, like I said, in a relationship, it would help me to try to help and play house and tame my drinking.
yeah, I can really relate to the relationship stuff. I remember when I first got sober and I was in like an existing relationship, and it was almost like my addiction kind of switched over. I became kind of very I was like very codependent, and if
Mhm.
things were going well, then I felt like on top of the world, but then
Yeah.
when we'd be fighting, it was like it was the end. Like I just felt so terrible and stuff. So I can really relate to that. I want to ask you, when did you start like thinking about getting sober? Were you ever like throughout the process going, "Hey, maybe I need to do something about this," or how did you kind of start to get
Yeah.
towards that?
So there were periods in my life, in the younger years that I did think about. I mean, listen, I got uh, a couple of DWIs early on in my life, like around 20, 21. And so during those times when that did happen, um, I had court mandated go to AA, trying to quit drinking. But it was really hard to think about never drinking again. I tried. I tried. And I did think about it off and on. But again, I didn't understand or even know what life could look like. I didn't think that I could be happy without it. When I turned 40, 41 was when I made a decision. I was living in New Jersey. We had moved from LA. My husband and I, we had our son in LA. We moved to New Jersey. We had our second child. And this was 20 years ago. And when my kids got a little older, I decided to go after a lifelong dream of getting in front of the camera. Now, this ultimately, my drinking increased during that time because get, going for auditions, trying to get the gig, being judged all the time, like it is a very, very, you've got to have some thick skin. You can't take it personally, but imagine going on an interview every other day trying to get the job, and that feeling of, "Am I gonna get it? Am I gonna get it?" And then you don't get it, and then, like, "What's wrong with me?" And that is what I felt like all the time. And then also trying to be there for my kids fully, because I didn't want my kids to feel that abandonment, like I did. So I had put a lot on myself during that time, and I started using alcohol as liquid courage. So my drinking really escalated during that time. Another thing that happened during that time for me is, and I've recognized that this was a big part of my story too, is I started perimenopause during that time. And for women, perimenopause really affects you emotionally. So, like, I really thought my world was falling apart. I thought everyone hated me. Like, when you, there was no darker time, right, during that time. And I started using alcohol more for that reason too. Ultimately, I did find some things that helped me. But towards the end of my drinking, that slippery slope that we talk about, like, the drinking maybe was some at night, little more on the weekends, became earlier drinking. Now it's like that's what it's in my water bottle. I'm using it when I go to the city for my auditions. I'm drinking after an audition. I'm drinking before a gig. Um, I'm starting to hide my drinking. So my drinking really started escalating in the end. I Before it really, really escalated, I knew that my drinking was becoming a bit of a problem. Like, I would wake up every night in the middle of the night, with that 3 AM, go to sleep fine because you've drank where you're I didn't black out, but of course, I went to sleep easily. But then I would just wake up with the guilt, all the decisions, the bad decisions I was making, not being the best parent I could be, lying. There was a lot of lying around my drinking, and my friends groups were changing, and I felt really, and my husband was we were not happy in our relationship. And so I would wake up every single night thinking, how can I stop drinking? How can I start actually not stop drinking? It was more about, how can I become a normal drinker, right? Whatever that is. I know I'm not as bad as my mom yet, but I want to get this thing under control. So I'm looking at acupuncture, hypnosis, all these different ways. And of course, the 12-step program kept popping up, popping up. Ultimately, I did go to the 12-step program, and I was sober for 3 months. But even though I was in the program, I was doing the work, I didn't fully believe I was an alcoholic, because I was comparing myself to other people in the room, and I'm like, "I'm not that bad. I'm not waking up drinking. I'm still have a good life in the community. I'm still a good mom." I got a lot of guilt around drinking a little bit too much, right? So I convinced and by the way, the other thing that'll get you is everyone around you is saying, "You don't have a drinking problem. I don't think you drink too much. What are you talking about?" Because, like, most people didn't see it. And so I convinced myself and my husband that I could get myself in check with my drinking. So I had convinced myself that I wasn't an alcoholic. I'd gone on vacation and was sober, and, like, everything was great. Actually, life was getting better. But then I convinced myself that I could drink. That was actually Halloween, because I remember we went to a Halloween party and I had a glass of wine and I nursed that one glass of wine all night long. Now, fast forward a year later, I am hiding my drinking, drinking excessively, having problems in my marriage. Now I'm starting to black out, and I didn't black out. Like, I wasn't that drinker where I was blacking out all the time, but now I'm starting to get some times where I'm blacking out. I'm starting to drink and drive. Like, my decision making was way off the rails. And it was October 3rd, 2015. So you asked me if I thought about it. Like, it's something you think about all the time. Like, somebody says, "Well, when did you make the decision?" Like, it is a long process to make that decision and then ultimately hit that rock bottom, and that's what happened for me. So October 3rd, 2015, I went on a modeling gig. I had my um I had my bottle of wine, my liquid courage, as I called it. I'd convinced myself that I didn't need it, but then I was at the wrong mall. So now I am racing to this other mall and I'm drinking and speeding all the way there. My girlfriend was at the gig, watched the runway show, and we went out afterwards. And I was barely eating at the time because all my calories were coming from alcohol, and I got a DUI. I mean, I blacked out, got behind the wheel of the car, I don't remember doing that, and I got a DUI, and I went to bed a victim, and I woke up the next day, and it was like, "Marcy, you need help." And I broke down, and I went downstairs, and I sat down with my husband, and I told him I needed help, and, I mean, it was actually a beautiful, beautiful moment because he embraced me. And the love that I'd always been looking for, that I was always putting the barriers up from receiving, because I didn't know how to give it or receive it, it just it just all the weight came off my shoulders, the walls came down, and it started the miracle of sobriety. And I called someone that I had met in the rooms, and I met them at a meeting, and I was ready. I mean, I was ready to do whatever it took. And so that that was just about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago now.
Wow. It never gets old hearing everyone's stories, like,
Yeah.
especially the turning point and stuff. There were so many things that you said that I could really relate to. And as you're talking, telling your story, I'm thinking about kind of my last day where I had that rock bottom where I just finally had enough.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you real quick before we kind of get into what you did in early sobriety. How did you feel about 12 step? Because I was someone that I mean, I've loved it now. It's been a big part of my recovery, but I didn't like it at first when I was super young. And it's because of what you said. I used to hear
Yeah.
people saying these horrendous stories. And I'm like, dude, I'm 18, 19 years old. I'm still having
Yeah.
fun. What are you guys
Yeah.
talking about? But I just want to ask you what you thought about it in the beginning.
Well, of course, at first, I mean, there's so much shame and guilt walking into those rooms. Like, how did I get here? Right. But I started seeing other people that were like me. I started hearing stories. I started having people come to me that wanted to help me. And so for me, you have to remember at that time, I was 45 years old. So there were a lot of women my age going through the same thing. And I mean, I live in suburbia. So we live we have these 12 step meetings with a lot of suburban women. And so it was good for me to see a lot of people that were this similar as me, right? And so that was very helpful. I needed that community. I mean, we all need community. Isolation is the worst thing you can do in this disease. But it helped me because I'm sure it was hard for you. Like, I mean, I mean, I remember being very young. You got to find the meetings where the younger people are. I mean, there's a lot of wisdom from those that are older, but it's hard to relate. But so that was very, very helpful for me in the beginning. And those 12 steps, like when I say that I did the work, those 12 steps saved my life in so many ways. And um, that I share that in my new book, Wake Up, You're Not Broken. I break down each one of the steps and how what I learned and what helped me.
Oh, that's cool. You break it all down. Yeah.
Mhm.
I wanna ask you, tell me about the books. How did you, I know we talked before we started here. You said on
Yes.
one of them you were thinking about writing it for a couple years. Can you kinda walk me through the process
Yeah.
of how you started, writing?
Yeah, so my first book is called Chaos to Clarity: Seeing the Signs and Breaking the Cycle. So, right, it's coming from the chaos of my life. It's my memoir. And so my chaotic life, my addictions that I had, now addictions to relationships, addiction to alcohol, trauma of my past, take you through recovery. And then on the other side of it, what helped me, right? How did this change my life? How did the 12-step program change my life? What did I do afterwards that helped me to build a better life, right? Because it's about moving on from the old story that you were given in life, right? Now you're creating your own life. And that's what I want to help people to do, that to realize that their past does not define them. That is what I have learned. What happened in my past does not define who I am today. I get that choice today. And through the work that I've done, I have changed my life. And then also seeing the signs, a big part of the book is about seeing the signs from the other side. So I was guided to actually write that book. My higher power, universe, God, whatever you want to call your higher source. Okay. I kept having this feeling like you need to write your story. People kept saying to me, like, when are you going to write your book? When are you going to write your story? Like, people need to hear your story. Your story is going to save lives. I'm like, "Me? I'm not gonna write a book. What like, I'm just trying to get through the day," right? And, so then I had started my talk show, Wake Up with Marci, and I was meeting so many incredible people, and this person, somebody ended up canceling, um and this other one, my booker, she ended up saying, "I know someone that would be a great guest." And she came on the show and she helped authors to write their books. And I told her about my book. And it was just like when something's kind of when something is meant to be and you want something out of life and you're going through the right flow, these people start coming into your life. You start attracting the people in your life that can help you with this. And that's what was happening for me. And then I told my husband, like, listen, because it costs money. That book, I had someone co-write it with me, a ghostwriter, because I didn't know what I was doing. I knew that my story, I knew what I wanted in that book, but I needed someone to map it out for me, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So and then I also had a publishing, I found a publisher, so they helped with the editing. So I had a lot of help and support with that book. But I just knew that I was guided to do that book because I started seeing all these signs in my life, meaning um, when I decided to write the book, like all these nudges were happening. I went outside on my deck and I looked up and I said, "All right, God, I'm going to write the book." And I am not lying to you. When a rainbow appeared, it was not raining, there were no clouds. All of a sudden, this rainbow appears. These two doves fly by me and a dragonfly. Dragonflies are a big part of my story, came by me. And it was just that's what I share in that book, is like there's so many signs from the other side that are in our lives that that are helping to guide us on the path that we are meant to be on. When I first got sober, like my first year, we ended up moving to a new house. There was a little dragonfly that started. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, like I've got my dragonfly here. I usually always have a dragonfly on all of my branding. A lot of times on my books, there's dragonflies. I look up and there were thousands of dragonflies. And to me, like dragonflies now, they mean transformation. And that was just like all my angels giving me the okay, we're here with you, right? When I did my amends with my husband, We walked out on the deck. There were, I'm not kidding you. The whole deck was swarmed with ladybugs. So I just have so many stories in that book. And so I just want to help people to open their eyes to the other side and what is guiding them. So that's what happened with that book. Then this book, Wake Up, You're Not Broken, What to Expect in the First 30 Days of Sobriety. I've had this on my heart for 2 years. I just didn't think it was a book that I didn't know that that was the right way for me. I didn't know if that was a book I wanted to write. And I finally made the decision right before summer. And I'm telling you, I wrote the book on my own and turned it around in 6 months. So it's just that book is the blueprint. That's what I wish that I had, a hand to hold for those first 30 days. I mean, that's the hardest, darkest time. And you're going to find what to expect during that time, what you're going to feel, what's going on with your body, what are the tools that will help you, how does the 12-step help you, what other help is available, because maybe the 12-step program is not for you, but there is so much help out there. And what could work for you, what worked for me? We all have different stories, we all have different ways to get through this disease, and also the understanding that this is a disease. We need to understand, I mean, this is not about willpower. This is not about a lack of good judgment. When we get to this place, I mean, we are full on, our body, our brains have been hijacked, right? And what is happening? And so I just share so many tips and tools, and I just want those to know that are reading it and going through it, that you're not broken and there's so much help, and I'm here with you. And let me help you each day to know what's going on, what you're going to feel potentially. So I'm just really excited to January 5th, the book's coming out. And I just wanted to be that companion to people in that first 30 days and even on, like what to expect beyond the 30 days.
Yeah, and it's really cool stuff, and it kind of brings me back to my first 30 days, and they were
Hmm.
rough.
Yeah,
I
rough.
I
They
hadn't
sucked.
experienced, yeah, there was a lot of emotions and feelings that I had just ignored for years. And you know what is another I was kind of waking up too, and I started to like look around in my life, and just I saw all the stuff that needed help or that I had ruined, or that you talked about amends and the relationships and stuff like that. So I think that's a great idea, something that can just guide people a little bit and help them out. I want to ask you, what was your first 30 days? Can you kind of bring us back
Yeah.
to kind of how you felt in that first month? You talked to your husband, you said, look, I'm turning it around, and he was supportive and stuff. What kind of happened over that month after that?
Well, first of all, I made the commitment to go to meetings 90 days and 90 meetings in 90 days. And so that was very, very important to me. I also I was willing to do the work within those 12 steps. I'd been to therapy all my life. I was on antidepressants. I was doing everything that I thought I could to get through that trauma, but I recognized that those 12 steps were saving everyone's lives within those rooms, and so I wanted what they had. Stop and listen. Listen to the stories of those that are in the room. I also it was also important for me to share, like, not sit in the shame and be isolated. I wanted to feel a part of, and that helped me. That helped me a lot. Uh, it helped me to even if it was one person, to connect to someone that could help me. Like, so if I had uh, a moment where I wanted to drink, like somebody I could turn to. I wanted to embrace all of the tools, and listen, I was going through shame, I was going through guilt, I was going through fear, I was going through sadness, I was going through grief. I mean, you're going through it. Those emotions, like you said, like, these are things that those emotions, and you've been pushing them down for so long because you're so afraid to face them. And there's so much shame and guilt about what you've done, the decisions that you have made. Um, but as you as your the fog begins to lift, as you become your body becomes a little cleaner and you're healing, and that toxic drug that you've been putting in your body starts to leave you, you do start to feel some goodness, some possibility, and little uh, little moments of clarity and peace, and you learn the tools to navigate those, right? So you may feel like your skin is crawling because you've not felt that peace before, but through the stories and the tools that you learn, whether it's a sober coach, the 12 step, um, maybe you need to go to rehab, whatever it is, take those tools and run with them because they have helped so many, and they helped me during that time too. I also allowed myself to start with a meditation and give myself the moments of rest because I was exhausted. I mean, you have to think about what's going on. Like your body is healing, your mind, body, spirit, right? And one thing that a lot of people get hooked up on is you need to have a higher power during this time. I mean, it I don't know too many people that can stay sober if they feel like they have to do it on their own, right? Like there's something bigger than you. So if God is uncomfortable for you, like even going out in nature, grounding yourself, using breath work, like these are the tools that you learn to become more connected with yourself. And so that's ultimately the biggest lesson that I've learned is everything that you think outside of yourself is going to give you that happiness. Everything is within you. And that's where you find that peace, that joy, that love, that serenity is when you go within. And then life is life is beyond good, which is what I have found. And you got to keep doing the work. But those 30 days, like you got to start the groundwork and you got to be willing to give it your all. Because if you're not ready. And I believe that fully. I also talk about relapse. I mean, relapse happens. Like, give yourself grace. There's you can't beat yourself up if you have a relapse. Just start again. Just start again the next day. Um, there's just a lot. There's so much you go through during that time.
Yeah, I was someone that had relapse and stuff, and as you're talking about kind of the feelings you experienced, the shame, the guilt,
Mhm.
I had all of that, but I love what you said about a higher power. I was going to ask you. I know we're getting towards the end here, but a lot of people get hooked or get hung up on the higher power stuff. It for some reason it turns them off or whatever. How did you kind of how did you form that relationship for you? Your kind of
Yeah.
personal concept idea of a higher power.
Well, I will tell you, when you go to a 12-step meeting, they're usually held at churches. And so there was I was raised in church. I was raised a Lutheran. I've converted to Catholicism. I am not someone that is, I take from organized religion what I want, right? What I did was I went to Jesus. I prayed at the front of this little church, this beautiful little church, asking Jesus to save me, to release me from the power of the alcohol that it had over me, and that I would be his lamb and he would be my shepherd. And I just wanted him to hold me. That was initially how it started for me because that's what I knew. I was taught, you envision God up in the sky and you know the story of Jesus, right? Today, what I truly think of about spirituality is that God is a divine, um, it is divinely love. Like we are all an extension of this divine source of love. So we're all made of energy. Everything in the world is made of energy. And I believe in of just this connection, this connectivity that we all have and we can have if we don't shut ourselves off from it. So ultimately, God is love. And that's how I think of him today. And I see God in many ways. I see God through nature. I feel God. I do a lot of meditations where I connect to God. So it's all an energy for me now versus this idea of the big scary guy in the sky. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of us were raised believing, right? That God is a damning you for things that you've done, and that's not true. And I believe that 100%. So I just feel a huge energetic connection, like even this morning. And one of the biggest ways that you can open up this energy um, path for yourself is by gratitude. Gratitude, instead of asking God for things, find the gratitude in your day and thank God, source, universe, the ultimate divine for the things. You start small. And that's how I had to start, right? Because everything was happening to me. Nothing good was happening to me. Life was happening to me. Like, why is all this bad stuff happening, right? But once I started with my gratitude practice, finding those small things in the morning before I got out of bed, I my cup of coffee I'm about to have. I'm in a warm bed. I've got a roof over my head. I have clothes, right? There's so many things we can be grateful for, even if it's not exactly what you want at that time. You still can be grateful for those little things. And as you become, that practice becomes more a part of your life, it gets easier and easier. You have that connection, divine connection, that energetic connection, and you start to bring into your experience the real things that you want.
Yeah, gratitude has, as you're kind of describing it, it's made such a difference for
Hmm.
me. And it was kind of, I was the same way because when I first got sober and you mentioned life kind of happened to you and all this stuff's going on and you feel like, well, what can I be grateful for? I
Yeah,
feel terrible. And then, but as time went on, I started to realize, oh, there's a lot of things to be grateful for. And I feel like gratitude is one of the most important things in battling, substance use and stuff because anytime that I relapsed, I was in a very ungrateful place, if that
right.
kind of makes sense. Marcy,
You're
I want to
pissed.
ask,
You're pissed.
yeah, yeah, I was pissed, and it's like, I just wanted some type of relief, but
Yeah,
you're at 10 years now. You've accomplished so much. You made such a big, transformation. You have your books and reaching out to other people and stuff. I want to ask you something I ask a lot of people that have years of sobriety,
yeah,
and it's typically like, how do you maintain it? Like you're at 10 years now. You've
yeah.
completely turned your life around. How do you stay motivated? This question is geared towards like the people that have years of sobriety, how do you keep it fresh? How do you stay motivated?
Well, I live my life um, of I live a life of service. That is very important to me. And I also have never stopped my practice. Your morning practice starts your day. I still connect to God. I still say the things that I'm grateful for. And I do that throughout the day. I never, I never not take the time to connect to God, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes. I sit every morning and I look out into nature, out the window, be thankful for the sunrise, just everything that I have in life. I just really live in a place of gratitude and forgiveness, and I've never stopped the practices that I have been taught. And living a life of service and not in a place of ego all the time is a huge, huge way I stay sober. And I got to say one thing. One of the biggest tools for me is that pop in the tape. If I ever think about having a glass of wine. I play it out. What did that look like? Right? You're not just having the one glass, you're having another glass. I can literally feel it in my brain, feel it in my body, that warmth. And then what is that going to do? It is going to unravel everything that I have built in my life. So pop in that tape, play it out, because is it really worth it at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think about that all the time. It's interesting, especially in the beginning, because I would play it out and my head would be telling me, hey, go do drugs. It's going to feel great. Go drink some beer.
Yes.
It's going to feel great. And then I would play it out and I'm like, it would feel great for 2 hours. And then I'd be right back to the misery, the years of just not being able to stop, wishing I could, wishing I didn't do it. I think that's
Misery.
it. Yeah, just
Just
absolute
keyword.
misery. And it's like,
Yeah.
Marci, thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time. I really appreciate talking to you. I'll leave you with one last question here. What is
Mhm.
your advice to anyone that is just starting off their journey? They've never been really sober before. Maybe they're just realizing that, alcohol is causing some problems in their life. What would your advice be to them?
Well, I want you to know that you're not broken. You're not alone. And you right now may think that it is not possible, that it may not be your reality. But if alcohol or any substance is bringing you down and making you live in a place of shame and guilt and worry, then you are ready. And listen to the stories, surround yourself with those that can help you. Don't isolate. And just remember that you are not alone. And that is the biggest part of this, that isolation is a killer. And staying quiet in your story is also a killer. And there's so many of us out there that have been where you are right now, and look where we are today. And that can be you. So just hold on to that, because you are not broken. You are not broken.
Yeah, I love that title. You are not broken. It's like everyone at one point thought they couldn't do it, and there's
Yeah.
people all over the place that are sober right now. So, Marci, thank you so
Yeah.
much. Anyone
Thank you.
listening, I'll put her books, website, all that good stuff in the episode details. Thank you again, Marci.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Holy shit, you made it to the end. Don't forget to subscribe, guys. Like, comment, share. Let me know what's going on with you. If you want to tell your story, the Sober Fix Podcast at gmail.com. Don't forget, we got a TikTok at the Sober Fix and an Instagram at the Sober Fix Podcast. Let's go another week, guys. I'll see you soon.